Here it is, folks. I can identify for you who it is that Jesus was talking about as he was leaving Jericho. Actually, this was recorded between Jericho and Jerusalem. In Luke's account, what kind of moral talent story is of a king that slaughtered his enemies before him? Herod the Great had appointed his son, Herod Archelaus, to rule after his death. Why? Because he had Antipater, but he just killed Antipater and then okay, now I'm going to give it to Archelaus. All right. So here it is. When Archelaus attempted to take power without the blessing of Rome, he hadn't gone to Rome after Herod's death, there was an uprising of the people took place due to the previous terrible treatment by his father, Herod the Great. Archelaus panicked and his soldiers slaughtered 3,000. I can show you the text right here. I can read it right out of Josephus, right there. Slaughtered 3,000 in the temple courtyard. Caesar Augustus had Archelaus exiled for his cruelty and replaced him with his brother Antipas. Herod Antipas was the king when Jesus told this story, and the people knew of what his father, Herod the Great, had done with multiple executions of his own. All right, here it is. It was Herod Archelaus, not Herod the Great, who famously had his enemies slaughtered before him. So when you read that text in Luke 19, now you get an idea of who he's talking about in verse 27. Well, let's go through this. It was Herod Archelaus, the mass killing incident. After Herod the Great died, 1 BCE, his son Archelaus became ethnarch over Judea, Samaria, and Idumea right at the beginning of his rule. During Passover, crowds in the temple protested against him and demanded justice for abuses committed under Herod the Great. Archelaus tried to negotiate. In fact, when you read it in the script, he was very cordial. He was trying to be accommodative to those people, but they were not so receptive to what he was negotiating. But the crowds grew more intense. He sent in soldiers who killed about 3,000, according to Josephus. The killing happened in and around the temple area before his eyes. Slay them before me. He was present and directing the action. Josephus, War 2.1.3, and Antiquity 17.9.3, and I've got them marked. Herod the Great, brutal but different patterns. Herod the Great certainly executed many of his rivals and perceived threats, including members of the Hasmonean family, his own sons, Alexander, Aristobulus, his wife Miriam, and also the son Antipater. Well, here it is. Now, upon the approach of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, although that we're here, who remembers what the unleavened bread feast is related to? When do you do the unleavened bread? It comes right after Passover. So now when you're reading Josephus, boom, you immediately know that there's a Passover here. Now upon the approach of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, according to Josephus, a countless multitude flocked to the city, and when Archelaus took his seat on the golden throne, they made loud lamentations. Archelaus sent his whole army upon them, and the horsemen slew many of them as they were running away, and the soldiers went on pursuing the others through the whole plain, and slew them so that a great number, about 3,000, were slain. Here it is, the other one. But the people crowded to the temple and besought Archelaus, but their demands grew more and more insolent. Archelaus sent upon them his whole army. The horsemen fell upon them in the temple, and the footmen in the streets, and a great slaughter was made of them. There fell about 3,000 men. So, the event happened right after Herod the Great's death. He was directing the action. 3,000 massacred. Slay them before me. It happened at Passover in and around the temple. And then it talks about If you want, I can show you Josephus' description of Herod the Great's executions of his own sons, political rivals with contrast with Archelaus' public. Okay. So basically, Herod the Great, he did a lot of killing. He was an family, high officials, enemies. But it was Archelaus that Luke 19 is referring to. So the dramatic slaughter before him belongs to Archelaus, not Herod the Great. That's what you will now read when you are reading Luke 19. You will know who Jesus was talking about and why.
In this story, the king said, "Mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them."
Boida, bring them hither, and slay them before me.
This was probably a true story that the people knew of a king that would slay his enemies.
Now, here is a very important take on this. If you go back to the writing of Matthew regarding the birth of Christ, Herod the Great sending his soldiers to kill the 2 years and lower in Bethlehem, remember that? But Joseph in a dream said, get out of there, go to Egypt. So he did. Well, what happened is that he then was advised to take, when he was in Egypt, and then he was said, well, you can now bring Jesus back. Well, so here we go. When Herod saw he was mocked by the wise men, he was wroth. He slew the children in Bethlehem. Go on down. That was fulfilled in Jeremiah. In Ramah, there was a voice, lamentations, weeping. Rachel weeping for her children would not be comforted because they were not. And when Herod was dead, verse 19, then what happens? Behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, arise, take the child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young man's life. Really? Okay. And he arose and took the young child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. Verse 22. And when he heard that Archelaus, the guy we just identified in this Luke 19 as being the guy that slaughtered 3,000 in the temple, when Joseph saw that, what did he do? He doesn't go to Bethlehem. No, he diverts north from Egypt. He's on the Via Maris, and he would have then come up way around going towards Damascus, right? Damascus over here. Nazareth is further to the east. So he would have gone up into, what does it says? It says, when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither, notwithstanding being warned of God in the dream. God said, go back, take him back. He turned aside into the parts of Galilee, and he came and dwelt in the city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene. So now when you read Matthew, and you see the word Archelaus, from now on, you'll know the backstory. You just now heard it for the first time. Why Joseph did what he did. Why did he go to Nazareth? Because of Archelaus and him killing 3,000. Okay.
As for my enemies who don't want me as their king, bring them here and slaughter them before me.
This is going to get a little rough. The videos I'm going to show you, but this is what it. Here's the region as to where he was. This was Archelaus, ethnarchy. This was his. Philip, and in later course, if I can get to it, this is Antipas, and then Philip. Anyway, this is where they all. Rome would assign these guys their areas to rule. And Here's a picture of Archelaus, Herod Archelaus. And then this is a quick over Josephus mentions when Herod's death. It's not 4 BCE. It's really 1 BCE. And why? Because there's not enough time. The first one was a partial lunar eclipse, and then March 13, 4 BCE. Passover was April 11. Only 29 days. It just doesn't work. And so there's a lot of problems with that. The timeline is too tight. Herod illness, execution of Matthias and companions, public mourning, Herod's death, elaborate funeral, 7-day mourning, Passover arrival. But on January 10th, 1 BCE, total lunar eclipse, increasingly favored by many scholars. This is the strongest alternative and has gained significant traction. Type, total lunar eclipse, very noticeable. January 10, 1 BCE. Passover, April 8, 1 BCE, 3 months later. And why many scholars prefer it. And the reason I'm saying this is because Jesus could not have been born, as we were seeing, on 11th of September, 3 BCE, if Herod was not alive. If he died in 4 BCE, that would have been a year before Jesus. Well, now that we have the correct dating, not off of just what Josephus says, but the using that tool. Well, this is the tool that gives you a better idea as to what's going on in dating the death of Herod the Great. And this is why it fits. Many scholars prefer it. Total eclipse fits Josephus' tone better, allows ample time for all events. Josephus records, aligns well with Roman historical data, Herod's regnal years, Luke's chronology, resulting conclusion. Herod likely died in 1 BCE, not 4 BCE. Do you see the significance of that? It's huge, because now in 1 allows Jesus to be born in 3 BCE, a couple years before his death. Anyway, this view is often associated with scholars such as Jack Finnegan, Andrew Steinman, and other revisiting Herodian chronology. And so this is where it comes from in this book, pulled directly from Josephus. And Herod Great had just died. His son Archelaus took temporary control. Archelaus was under enormous pressure to prove his authority. During the Passover, huge crowds gathered, hundreds of thousands of Jewish pilgrims into the temple courts. They were already upset. Herod had executed rabbi and student shortly before his death. Many hoped Archelaus would bring justice or reverse Herod's policies. A protest broke out demanding justice for those Herod executed. Josephus says a group of Jews demanded that Archelaus punish the men who carried out Herod's late executions. They called for the removal of corrupt priests. They prayed loudly and publicly for God to restore righteous leadership. These demands were made inside the temple courts in front of tens of thousands. What happened? Archelaus panicked and tried to quiet them. He first was diplomatic, and you can read it. He was trying to be diplomatic, but he couldn't handle it. He took soldiers, officers. He sent officers to calm them down. He told them he needed time until Rome. He would have to go to Rome and talk to Augustus. Yes, he would have to go to see Augustus to get confirmed for kingship. The crowd did not stop protesting. Situation became worse. Protesters more intense. Josephus said the crowd turned the temple area into a prolonged demonstration. The atmosphere was threatening of Archelaus' authority. Passover pilgrims began chanting about God overthrowing unjust kings. Archelaus, young, insecure, and eager to prove control, lost his composure. He then sent soldiers, first cavalry, to surround the temple. Infantry, regular troops, entered into the temple court. Are you kidding? These are Gentiles going into a very restricted area of the temple that only certain people are allowed in there. And you've got these guys going. Anyway, the temple was considered sacred space. Sending troops inside during a major Passover, Nisan 14, sending troops inside during a major festival was a massive violation and guaranteed chaos. The soldiers attacked and slaughtered the crowds. Josephus gives a number, 3,000. The killing occurred in the outer temple courts among pilgrims who had come for worship, many unarmed trapped due to crowd density. This was a massacre, not a battle. The Passover, get this, it was canceled. The temple area was filled with dead bodies. A dead body to any of the priests, if he touched or even came close to a dead body, he was unclean. He could not participate in the Passover. That was a problem. And now the temple's full of them. 3,000 dead bodies in the temple. It was halted. Thousands fled. Archelaus sent everyone home to stop further unrest. Ending Passover prematurely was unthinkable and caused enormous trauma among the Jewish people. And do you think Jesus would have remembered that in this story that he told in Luke 19 that Luke recorded? You bet. That was a lot of trauma on these people. And, and I'm talking about this man or this king slaughter my enemies before me. After the massacre, Archelaus sailed to Rome. He left immediately, pled to Caesar Augustus, explained why he killed so many, requested to become king. Jews, here it is, sent a delegation to Rome to accuse him of tyranny. And remember, in my fictitious story, sent a delegation? It's not fictitious. This is Luke. Why? Because they didn't want him to rule over us. We will not that this man should rule over us. And that's why. So when you read that text, we will not that this man rule over us, is because of what he did. He killed 3,000 of those people. Does that make sense? We don't want him. So he sent a delegation. Well, until ultimately, Caesar Augustus did not make him a king. Made him an ethnarch, lower title. Archelaus later proved so oppressive that Augustus banned him in AD 6. He banished him. And then he gave it to Antipas. His brother Antipas became in his place. Why the 4 BC should be 1 BC massacre mattered. It deeply shaped Judean hatred of Archelaus, their fear of his rule, their potential and their political instability, their memory of Passover being profaned by bloodshed. This event likely explains why Joseph was afraid to return to Judea under Archelaus in Matthew 2, verse 22 that I showed you. Now you have the backstory. Summary. Herod the Great just died. Crowds gathered. Protesters demanded their reforms. Archelaus panicked, sent in soldiers, killed 3,000. Passover canceled. Archelaus went to Rome to defend himself. This was one of the bloodiest Passovers in Jewish history. So here it is. What you're going to see is a little violence.
As for my enemies who don't want me as their king, bring them and slaughter them before me. Slay them before me! Slay!
There he is. That's a picture of Archelaus. That's his brother, Antipas, that took over. Antipas was the one that was ruling the time of Christ. He also was involved with taking off the head of John the Baptist. I think it was him. I'm pretty sure it was Antipas. because of the marriage to a woman that wasn't his, and he didn't like it. This is the guy right here. Augustus, September 23, 63 BC, and we're going to talk about that. That was an important time. He died August 19th of 14. He died actually 1,941 and 1 day before I was born. All right. So anyway, I'm going to stop right here, and when we come back, we're going to go into we're going to go live on the stock market.